Graham, very good evening to you. 2 years ago in Cairo, Obama promised, didn't he, a new start in Arab relations. Now NATO's bombing one country and he's essentially threatening another. What kind of progress is that then?
Well, it's interesting. A Cairo speech 2 years ago was a speech to the whole Arab world, a general speech. Now Obama was trying to tell the world, tell the Arab world and to tell Americans that the so-called Arab Spring, the upheaval and tumult in the last 6 months, has changed the world. And it's probably the most significant change in the Middle East for 100 years since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. I thought his main point was, look, it's risky, but there are some huge opportunities for us to do good and to act here, both for America's interests and for the world's.
Sounds lovely, but it seems a bit selective as well. I mean, during this time, America's backed dictators in some places and opposition in others. I mean, Obama only briefly mentioned Bahrain earlier on tonight, but it doesn't look like the US is going to insist on democratic change there. Of course, it's a place that also hosts a US fleet, isn't it, for instance?
Well, I thought Obama was about as honest as an American president can be when he said, look, this strategy is not set in concrete. Each country is going to be different. In Libya, for example, well, no one likes Gaddafi, so it was pretty much low risk for the U.S. to join NATO and getting rid of him, and I do think he'll be gone by the end of the summer. Bahrain's quite different. We have a major military base there, and so he has to tread much more carefully. And as your other correspondent said, for example, in Syria...
But does that mean he should change his principles as well and not clamp down so heavily on the people that are against the protests there?
I thought, in all fairness to the man, that he did a pretty good job of saying, look, it's a real world out there, and yes, we will support the family in Bahrain for traditional nation-state interests, but by and large, we're trying to take advantage of this huge upheaval in the Middle East, and we're changing. He called it a new narrative. We're reshaping the narrative, which I thought is very exciting stuff. It's high risk, but it's potentially high reward. We'll not only support democratic values and democratic freedoms, but we'll put our, if you will, our money where our mouth is. He talked about support for economic development, investment and trade, support for civil society, support for these countries building from scratch in some cases, a free media and a free judiciary. These are, as you point out, these are bold words, they're wonderful words, they're idealistic words. I have no idea if he can keep those words. But he said them. America is now out front behind those words, and we'll see what happens.
OK, well, something else he called for was a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders, and that's already had short shrift from Israel. Well, what's that going to do for relations between the two countries, especially this coming Friday, of course, when Obama and Netanyahu meet?
I'm sure that the door to the Oval Office will be tightly closed, and if the two men want to scream and yell at each other, they will do so. I'm sure Netanyahu didn't like the president's the president saying that we want things to start from the 67 borders, but at the same time, the U.S. I think is adamant that we won't allow Netanyahu to use the current upheaval as yet another excuse for no action, and Obama will push very hard on that. There are great difficulties. The fact that Hamas and the Fatah have reached some sort of an accord is very difficult for Israel and for the United States. But as the president pointed out very clearly, all of us are just tired of decades of words with no action. This time, something's got to shift. If there's any hope, I would say this time, it's that because of the Arab Spring, the bolts have been loosened. That things that were absolutely stuck have at least received a little bit of oil in the joints, and something could change if people are brave and visionary enough to take advantage of it.
All right, then, John, let's also focus on Egypt and Tunisia. Financial aid announced for both those countries, but, you know, is the US looking to buy itself more influence in the region there by doing that?
I think that the U.S. will greatly profit from increased trade with the Middle East. Not only the fact that our oil supply might be more secure, you didn't mention that, but that's a very real concern, but the fact that if the Arab world is economically integrated into larger global markets, he said, for example, if some of your viewers listened, that the entire trade of the Middle East, if you accept oil, is no bigger than that of Switzerland. In other words, it's minuscule. So if the Middle East begins developing alternative products, for everything from tourism to high tech, for example, and develops the universities and the other infrastructure needed to do that, they will then create a stronger middle class. They will have more to lose by violence, and all of it makes the place more stable, which is in the U.S. interest.
John Graham, delighted to have your thoughts on the programme, former US diplomat as you are. Thank you for being on RT.
Thank you for